I'm happy to be here and present some of the findings from my research to date and projects we have going on. And hopefully we can have also some show and tell about zero waste and teach you a few things that you probably already know where things go, but think again, because truth is sometimes different. Briefly, presentation outline, just roughly my research objectives, questions, what am I after, how am I planning to go about it and doing it. Research to date, research currently in progress as well as planned for the new year, and hopefully lots of time for questions and discussion. My interests, just like most of us here, pretty sure, is how can we facilitate sustainable pro-environmental behavior change throughout the world. Part of that is what is change, how does change happen, how can we facilitate it, what are the key elements and components, and this is always an inspiration to me. If we can find a way, we can move the world. Global waste situation, as you also probably are aware, I could have used a much more graphic, shocking photo to make you stop eating your lunch at the moment, but I chose something a little bit different just to demonstrate you are well aware that global waste problem is quite significant. Americans, it's estimated, waste, or actually generate close to a ton of waste per year, per person. Canadians were doing a little bit better. We're only 500 kilograms of waste per person per year. A big chunk of that is food. I think there's been quite a bit of campaigns about food waste. We are aware that we waste about 40% of food. A lot of it is wasted before it even reaches supermarkets. And of course, projections. Picture doesn't look too bright at the moment, given the current trajectory. Waste is set to double in a lot of areas, especially in the developing regions where management isn't as good as here. Speaking of here, local context, where my research is actually looking at our local Metro Vancouver and UBC situation. We have pretty high diversion targets as a part of the Vancouver's Greenest City 2020 action plan, and UBC is matching those waste diversion targets to 60% for 2016 and 80% for 2020. So this is all the stuff that's going to the landfills, the amount of paper, recyclable, compostable materials that shouldn't be there that we can recycle instead. And is the top one a laser pointer? Yes, great. So this is a waste audit from 2010. We're about to do another one. And I want to draw your attention to the landfill materials side. Most of the things that we're sending to the landfill actually, as I mentioned, can be recovered, can be composted, recycled, and really only about maybe 10% of stuff is garbage that should be actually going there. We have the organics bylaw in effect as well. That's adding the legislative muscle to kind of stimulate more people participating and more businesses in the zero waste targets. And UBC has made quite a significant commitment as well, over $1 million for the infrastructure, education, awareness, and all those things. Why zero waste research again, even on our own campus? When I started working with campus sustainability, it was really eye-opening to see that we have such an array of infrastructures and a lot of places set up their own systems that are somewhat quite confusing. Sometimes there's carts, sometimes there aren't, sometimes garbage outnumbers the recycling streams. This was an example at the sub where it's almost making it very difficult and confusing to try to recycle, especially up here we have some interesting signage going on as well. People take the signage in their own hands. Cans and bottles bin suddenly becomes paper only. Who's going to read that? And that leads to some serious contamination in the bins. A lot of these components, improper infrastructure, improper signage, awareness. This is a compost bin, if you can believe it. There's some styrofoam there, there's plastics. This is a paper bin with quite a few plastic items, and similarly a containers bin with lots of paper items. So why is contamination important? Because when it reaches a certain threshold, the custodial or the service staff will decide this is just too difficult to uncontaminate, which means the whole bin then has to go to the landfill. So it kind of negates the positive effort that people are doing. People are participating. A lot of people are aware and trying to sort, but oftentimes we're doing it incorrectly. I will now jump through the research questions and objectives and the theoretical framework before we go into the experiments that were completed. My research questions, again, deal with how can we improve waste diversion efforts. What are the key components? Is there the infrastructural pieces, the know-how, knowledge, meanings, motivation, context, social norms? They're all part of this sorting behavior infrastructure. The second question deals with what ensures persistence of behavior over time. We also know that sometimes people pick up behaviors and habits, but they don't always last over time. After some interventions end, the behavior backslides. How can we make sure there is a persistence over time? And lastly, also, what are the consequences of sorting? So one of the questions is there a spillover into other environmental behaviors? So if people get really good at recycling and composting at school and at home, will this somehow spill over to energy and water conservation? This is one of the goals to look into. And then another question is, well, how does this actually affect consumption and waste in the first place? Do people think, well, now everything's recyclable and compostable, I don't have to curb my consumption, I'll just continue recycling and composting, or can it also curb the consumption, which is also part of the problem? A little bit about the theoretical framework. As an interdisciplinary department, of course, we have interdisciplinary interests, and mine cover environmental and social psychology, complex systems thinking, and resource management, cradle to cradle kind of design, and look at the systems and the things that we produce can actually be recycled and be reused as a material all over again. And two key areas that I'm synthesizing, again, deal with the physical components, materials, infrastructure, bins, their availability, convenience, location, 3D displays, messages, and on the other hand, the skills and the motivation. So this is part of the social norms, the context, knowing how to sort, education and competence, and the ripple effects. And now we get into the really exciting part, which is the research project to date. Last winter, we've done a project in student residences. We have Gage on the left side and Marine Drive towers on the right-hand side. We selected 2 towers from Gage and 3 from Marine Drive. And these were our conditions. So in the control condition, there was no 3D display, no paint, just bins as they usually are with some basic signage such as this, which I've noticed they haven't updated yet. There's some items there that, for example, now we recycle number 6 plastic. Here it still says 1 to 5 and 7, I can read it. And milk cartons can now be recycled. They're still shown there going to garbage. The system, again, is imperfect. We're working with Camp Sustainability and student residences to update, but sometimes the ball is in their court and it just takes them a while to kick it. So first condition, control in Gage and in Marine Drive. The second condition, they got this fancy display where I hunted down some fake food-like items to give them ideas that these nature bowl cups are compostable, napkins, the wrappers, these compost containers, and they went right above the bin. And then in the third condition, they also got a nice fresh coat of paint on the wall and below, which I really liked, like creating a really nice queue, as well as the organics bins were placed right by the door, which also backfired a few times because some people just see a bin and throw garbage in. We found a few times just random garbage thrown in. But over time, students got better to the exposure. Here is the data. In the Gage towers, which we were told was already participating in waste sorting quite a bit because they had some interventions prior, our 3D display and paint, unfortunately, did not jump through the control as we were anticipating. However, on the Marine Drive side, where they didn't have previous engagements or any kind of outreach, educational kind of projects, our interventions did have somewhat of an impact compared to the control that didn't get the paint, the 3D display. So that was quite encouraging, although obviously we would have liked to see the effect in both the same way. Contamination, like I mentioned, is a big problem as well. We've used the rating scale from 1 to 4. 1 meaning no contamination or very little, 2 being, okay, a few more items, but it's acceptable, and then 3 and 4 being unacceptable materials will get landfilled, with 3 being somewhat better than 4 if somebody is really keen to uncontaminate. But 3 and 4 are unacceptable. And what we found in Gage, actually, the display and the paint did help with contamination compared to the control. But over there on Marine Drive, we didn't see the same kind of an effect, actually. So we basically got slightly mixed results, which is okay too. It just shows that we need to do more research, and we are redoing this study again with some more interventions. So the takeaway message is that our interventions did have an impact. This is percentage of compost destined for landfill. So these are the really contaminated bins, and our experimental conditions did bring that number down compared to the control, where we found a lot more contaminated bins. One of the hypotheses that one of the fellow researchers mentioned at the end of it was quite insightful, and I would like to pursue it. And she said, well, maybe it's a case where we first have to motivate and inspire people to engage in waste sorting behavior. And then the second step is to do it correctly. So maybe it's one of those things where it's very difficult to get people to get interested in sorting and do it correctly. It does take some time. So this is maybe also a way to think of interventions where one motivates people to engage, and another intervention teaches them how to do it over time. This is another project we've just completed this fall, quite exciting stuff. Apple Festival, everybody knows Apple Festival, UBC, lots of apples. They attract over 10,000 people over 2 days, 70 types of apple varieties, with 50,000 apples sold. So 2-day festival, and we were invited to help them with their events, with zero waste for events. Events is another area that generates a lot of trash. Next time when you're at a conference or any kind of outing, just take a look what kind of materials people bring and what's happening. And sometimes at events, especially what usually happens in the control, they just bring the bins and leave them there, and the assumption is people will use the bins and sort correctly. So we wanted to put that to the test, and we had 4 conditions in 2 areas of the festival. The control bin carts, as they usually would be, bin tops. These go conveniently into the bin, provide the signage, and they're nice and neat. You don't have to open, close the bins. They're much more convenient to interact with. A staffed bin area. This is a trained volunteer, and he knows what goes where, and he's there to interact and help the participants. And this is a bin top 3D display. So we've placed items that are most commonly available at the festival, and we hope that this visual cue would help people sort. What did we discover in the data? This graph is, there's a lot going on, so take your time. I do have some fancy animations. The staffed condition did the best. Oh, sorry, actually first give you a little bit more background. So this is all the organics for each condition: staffed, BT3D, BT, control. So green is the organics, gray is containers, blue, paper, and garbage. On the left side, we have the total kilograms per bin, and on the right-hand side of the graph on the y-axis, we have the total number of contaminants. So for example, here we have 44.6 kilograms in all the organics bins, and only 11 contaminants for all of those bins. So as anticipated, the staffed condition did the best. What we also hoped, however, was that our 3D displays would be the second best in terms of the least amount of contamination. However, as you see, they actually have quite a bit of contamination in them compared to the BT and sometimes even the control. Not in all instances, for example, here and here, but it proves that putting the bin tops and putting some 3D display on top did not solve the contamination problem. The contamination problem is a lot more complex and difficult to solve than we anticipated. And I think another component is that the bin top 3D displays are quite interesting to interact with. One of the theories that I have is that when you see just a regular bin set and you see a kind of funky looking bin set, you're maybe more likely to approach that one and try sorting with it. And that's why we see so much amount of stuff, kilogram wise, but it brought a lot of contamination with it, because it shows people are actually quite confused. People forget their utensils and cutlery inside their compostable container and they throw it in, and there's a lot of reasons for that. So long story short, we haven't solved the contamination problem in our one study. It's a lot more complicated, which means I have more research to do. So here we are. We have ongoing studies currently. This is a mirror condition we have in 2 buildings currently. The mirrors are supposed to, just like with Emily poster here, supposed to bring you this awareness and the connection that, hey, where can that thing go? Maybe you can recycle it. So we're hoping to see that there'll be less stuff thrown in the garbage and more stuff recycled. And we also have 2 buildings where we have the displays. These displays look much nicer than the ones we had at the Apple Festival. Maybe next year we can put these and see if it makes a difference. They sit nice and conveniently above the sorting station, and they give you cues what should go in which bin. We also have a few other studies in the University Neighborhood Associations buildings, as well as I mentioned, we're redoing that paint and 3D display study in Marine Drive, but we're adding the super bright yellow laminated, no plastics in this bin. Hopefully it will work. And other cues like these cute posters that Metro Vancouver has developed. Another part of our research deals with education. I know sometimes it's said, well, awareness and information don't lead to behavior change. And that is true in the rough sense. But information is totally the key as well to contamination, because when you have various items sold and you can't quickly decide is this paper, is this plastic, is this compostable, you will likely put it in the wrong bin and contribute to contamination. So information and education is a key. And Dr. Zhao, one of Dr. Zhao's students has developed a sorting game, which is now touchscreen as well. So the link is there. I can send it after the talk to everyone if you would like to. And it's great because we get the real-time data. What are the most common problems on campus? What are the most common contaminants? And we can also track and see how well they do, and we can improve the system. And we have a few minutes for the game. So let's do a little game here. It's not going to be as exciting as the one that you play online, but I think it's going to be quite as interesting. Just yell out the answer where you think it might go. Paper towels and napkins. You guys are good. So many people put it in a paper bin because it's paper, but it's not like sheet of paper. It's not a newspaper. It's not a magazine. It's wet, soft paper, so it has to go in compost. It's a very common problem. Styrofoam cups. They are not recyclable currently in the Metro Vancouver and UBC stream. So any styrofoam items have to go to garbage, unfortunately. Broken glass. In general. Garbage, I got that one wrong too. It killed my 100% effort. But broken glass, I guess it's a hazard, safety issue. And one more, plastic bags. Garbage, correct, garbage. So any shrink wrap, tin foil even, chip bags, snack wrapper bags, anything that crinkles and that's soft, it's garbage, unfortunately. We used to pretend we recycle it, but we weren't recycling it. So now we just don't take it. Yes? Some do say, yeah, London Drugs, I think, and Safeway. I've never followed the trail. What do they do with it? Do they really recycle it? And so this is one of those where we have to be careful if it's just a claim or are they really doing it. So last I heard was that when Metro was recycling technically, we were just shipping it to other places to deal with it. So that was not recycling in the proper sense. So we can follow up more. And I've been told we have very little time left, which is perfect. I'm almost done. These are most common errors. That was the last part. Another offshoot of the sorting game actually is the real-time motion tracking. So people are given the item, such as the paper towel, and every few milliseconds there's a screen capture and we can kind of trail. Sometimes you can see an actual, like a U-turn, where people thought they were going this way and then they go the other way. The green is correct, red wrong. So as you see, paper towels, a lot of people still think it's paper. Styrofoam, we have a range, even in the compost, which I find really troubling, that people are getting that one wrong as well. And broken glass, again, commonly you would think it's still recyclable, it's still a resource, but unfortunately it's garbage. And just briefly, we will be taking the sorting game into the student residences next term. We will be using them in the dining halls, provide them some feedback, give them some rewards. Usually chocolate bars work quite well to get them to play the game. And we will then test whether the game has improved actual sorting behavior and also then test the persistence of learning. So those are all the slides I have for now. I'm the king of the world, I'm the top of the trash. It was quite an exciting weekend. And I should also mention that, well, Zhaying was also helping us with measurements and everything. And I would like to say that not only did we do the research, but we also tried to uncontaminate as many bins as we could. And our research was 80% of all the waste generated at the Apple Festival. And we couldn't just like measure the data and go home. We wanted to uncontaminate the bins. And therefore, I think that helped the actual diversion even more than we would have otherwise. So thank you very much. Now we have time for some questions. Questions. Yes. No problem. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I'm wondering if there are studies like how that international characteristic has makes things a little bit more.
Oh yes.
Personally,
Perfect.
those issues.
Yes. We've been quite told, especially for the residences, when they often have quite a turnover, and for University Neighborhood Association, even though it's mainly for staff, faculty, but anybody can really live there, and they'll sometimes have 30-40% students or just people come for a year and move out. So there is continual need to relearn and retrain. No studies, to my knowledge, specifically on that, but a few people mentioned the ethnic component and different people with different language levels and experiences coming to our area, not really well versed in sorting or knowing that it's kind of a big deal here as well. But I think this is where time can help. So the longer people stay here, the better. And the better our infrastructure, the clearer, more convenient, streamlined, there's a higher chance that people can pick it up faster. But this coming and going of various people of different backgrounds is a big component of the waste sorting, for sure. For sure. Mm-hmm. 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 Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. Well, I've been told, and now I agree with this, that you should probably put it in garbage then, if you're not sure. And I was very similar to that. I think it's compostable, so I'll put it there because I know you're trying your best and you're going with good intentions. But if you're not sure, maybe garbage is the best in that instance. Contamination is such a big problem. Exactly. Thank you. Hi. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, we have actually all kinds, even biodegradable, which doesn't mean almost anything. Yes. Yes. Yeah, so there are steps. The Campus Sustainability is working really hard with, for example, at the new sub at the Nest, doing a bit of an inventory. And similar with the Apple Fest, I know that for next year they will try to work even harder with the vendors. Of course, they tell the vendors, you should have this and this, but when the vendors arrive, we only have this kind of thing. So it's very important that what we're giving in people's hands, people can learn faster and can know what should go. And cutlery is such a tricky one because oftentimes I'm told anything that touches food should be compost. But for example, our composting system on campus uses old-fashioned composting system, so things kind of churn, and so it's not like instantly pulverizes like a lot of those compostable cutleries are supposed to do. They will come out the same way they went in. So then there was a suggestion, well, maybe then they should be recyclable. But if you make them recyclable, again, another social component of how we like to eat and clean up after ourselves often is to pack everything together and make it like all your cracker wrappers, all your straws and cutlery, just stuck it all together into that little soup bowl, and then you get it from the bin, and now it's like, oh, I'm supposed to like take all of this out now. So you just kind of, it's 80% compostable, so you toss it in the bin. But then that 20% with everybody else's 20% adds up. So I realized that even if I could just decide for them what it should be, it's actually really tricky. What should this utensil even be made of? Because it is such a problem no matter what we make it. But materials are such an important component of sorting because people are aware. The surveys constantly show about 80% of people say they recycle, they'd like to compost, but they also say they need more information and that it's not always convenient. So we know that people are often confused and it's not easy. So we need to work on that. More questions? Yes, Jen? Mm-hmm. 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 Yes. 10% or less. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. 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 Well, the surveys on campus show 80% of people are well aware about sustainability goals and zero waste, and they want to participate. But they also say that they only recycle when it's convenient. A large percentage of that, 75%, say they recycle only when it's convenient, and there's about 10 or 15% of people that say they'll compost and recycle no matter how hard it is. They'll even carry compost home and things like that. So there's super keeners at the top, there's super no care people at the bottom, and then there's that whole slew in the middle that I think we can do a lot with, but we need to make it so much more convenient and simplified. Not at the moment, but that's a good point to explore. Yeah, am I? Yes, thank you so much. And email me any questions. Definitely, we can continue.